beautiful Queen Najmah. We're so excited that this is our first opportunity to interview anybody under the name of Responsible Artistry TV. And what better vibe to do it than by the water. Today is just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The sun went down for a little bit. The wind was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't ask for a better setting.
We could not.
No, we could not. So, just in case anybody in the community and in the world doesn't know about Dr. Najmah Thomas, who is actually, you got some good news that you posted on social media the other day. So give us an introduction of yourself and your good news, if you don't mind sharing.
I do not mind sharing. I'm super happy to share. First and foremost, I'm a saltwater daughter.
Yes.
And
Lowcountry daughter.
Oh, go,
Right,
give it to me. Let me know. Serenade me on the river. This is my home. St. Helena Island is my home, and I left home for a little while, and did my public policy, cut my public policy teeth in Richmond, Virginia, and but I always wanted to come back home to Beaufort, to St. Helena, really, to farm and take care of my parents. And that's just
you.
That was
Of course
just
you
my
did.
goal. And all of my friends and colleagues in Richmond would call me crazy because I said, when I finish all of, when I have a son, that's when my son graduates, I'm going back home, take care of my mom, I'm going to grow okra. And, okra does trade at a very high price, but it does not quite pay the mortgage.
Okay.
So I also am a professor at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. And so my good news
Is
as of August 16, 2020, I am a tenured associate professor of human services and African American studies in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of South Carolina.
beautiful. And for those of us who don't even know what tenured means, please let them know. Break it down.
Let me
Break
break
it down.
down tenure
Yes.
for the people.
Yes.
It is, you may have heard this term called job security. Job security doesn't exist anymore, in the forms that we once knew. But if there was a thing such as job security, then tenure would be it. It essentially means that for the duration of the university's time and my time, I will be connected with them. And beyond that, so it's like, okay, I'm not going to be fired, right? Okay, but beyond that, it's really about academic freedom. It's about financial freedom. Not that I make a lot of money, because university professor, it is not. We are not making a lot of money here, folks. But there is it's economic freedom because you know that you're going to be employed, and it is academic freedom because you don't have to worry about your research agenda. And if you want to say focus on equity for Black people in Beaufort County, and that's not necessarily popular with the mainstream audience, you don't have to worry about ticking off your dean or the chancellor. It doesn't matter because you're tenured.
Gives you freedom.
You're free
of some sort, right?
And if people following my social media, they may have seen over the past 6 years, because it took 6 years to get tenure. Every time I would get a paper published or something, I would say hashtag FreedomPapers. Or on Fridays, I would be writing these 30-page articles to send up for publication. Maybe they'll publish it, maybe they won't. And I would say hashtag FreedomPapers because I was writing my freedom. I was working on my freedom papers.
Gotcha.
But of course, it had double meaning because I write about freedom for people of African descent. And I decided to do that sort of mid-career. I'm a public policy practitioner. That's what my degree is in. I'm not, a historian. I'm a policy wonk. All right. I am from the government, and I'm here to help. That's what I do by practice and trade. I'm a policy specialist. But when I came home, and based on my experience in Virginia too, but just analyzing data and seeing how year over year, generation over generation, people who have been historically marginalized are still marginalized, right? And you look at the impact of public policy, and there's got to be some sort of humanitarian equity approach to that work if you really adhere to the principles of public policy, which there are 4 pillars, and one of them is equity.
Okay.
So then I had to get into the space where, well, all right, I got to be a change agent. You know, I got to be about social justice.
Absolutely.
If I'm going to be a public policy practitioner or professor of any credibility, I've got to start writing about equity. And so I made that sort of mid-shift career and mid-career decision, and it was way before tenure.
But you were working with intention.
I was working with intention.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of my mark. And the highest compliment I've ever gotten came from my son, Paris, who said, "Mom, you are diligent. That's what I know about you. You are diligent." And so I've been diligent in that approach. So that's me. But long and short of it, I'm a sophomore daughter down here. I want equity for the people, and I'm willing to work for it.
And you have been, ever since I've known you personally, not just hearing, Najmah or Dr. Thomas, it's you've always been attached to something in the community. Before I even knew what Mather was about, you mentioned it to me briefly, and this had to be over 6 years ago. Yeah, 5 or 6 years ago. And everything, St. Helena and farming, because when you come to the market, right, you come as our resident agriculturist. Right? And so you've always been attached to the community in the purest form. And so when we think of responsible artistry in terms of, because art is not just, subject to visual or music or, whatever. There's an art to everything. And so Miss Najmah Thomas is an artist in her own right when it comes to how she, walks and goes within our community. And so it just made sense. And perfect timing, because the day that we said, you know what, Najmah's going to be our first guest under Responsible Artistry TV, and we were doing the march.
That's right.
That's
day. Right.
And I can't even remember the last time I marched. But 50 has been interesting for me. I've been doing a lot of things at the age of 50. So, like I said, it just made sense.
Yeah.
And so you have 3 important bullet points that I think are very necessary and for us to talk about. So you're leading this conversation. I just want you to share with the community those 3 bullet points.
Sure.
Because the day that you brought them up, I had not thought about that.
Yeah.
And so when people can help you change and shift your perspective, that's a change agent, right?
And that's my art. Change
Exactly.
agency.
Exactly.
That's my art and public policy. Those are my tools.
Exactly.
My mediums.
Absolutely. So just start with wherever you want to start.
Sure. So this I'm going to call it a campaign, for lack of better terminology. I am trying to engage the community in any way, shape, form, or fashion around this equity now, equality later approach. And I put a status on my Facebook page the other day that said, in 2020, if anyone comes to me and says, "We need equality now," I'm going to say, "Well, bless your heart."
Right. I saw that.
And if
I
they
saw
say
that.
we need to use equity so that we can have equality later, I'm going to say, "Welcome, comrade, let's get to work." And this is the work that I was talking about. It was recently brought to my attention because I'm a person that, again, I said policy. So data-driven decision-making is a tool of policymakers. We take the data and we make decisions based on qualitative and quantitative data. So I was made aware of a data point that made me feel incensed. In the state of South Carolina, no one's going to be surprised now nationwide about racial inequity in the criminal justice right around the national average.
Okay.
Beaufort County, Black Beaufortonians are 5.2 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession.
So in Beaufort, it's higher than what it is in the whole state of South Carolina.
The whole entire state. And Beaufort County.
Did y'all get that? Yeah. Okay.
So that's, and the thing is, it's not a percentage. We're talking 5.2 times more likely than other races. Now I want to contextualize this because there's a large body of research that has, and this is independently verifiable, so you can triangulate. You know, you can go to this source, you can go to that source, and you go to that source, and the findings are very similar. And it suggests that people across all races use marijuana at remarkably similar rates. All right, so all of the things being equal,
right,
you would expect that arrest rates, even if it's a little off, maybe if I had seen Black people are 1.5 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana. Oh, okay, well, it's America, you know.
Yeah.
We got that thing. We working on it. It's gone. All right.
Yeah.
2 times, I'm going to raise my eyebrow. Black people are 2 times more likely to be shot by the police nationwide. You know, so that's twice as likely.
Right.
And that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Right.
I can't wrap my mind around 5.2 times more likely. And so what I did was I tried to switch it in my mind. I said, well, Mahoganee, think about if Black people in Beaufort were 5.2 times more likely to win the lottery than anyone else. Or think about if Black people working for Beaufort County were 5.2 times more likely to be promoted than any other race. There would be bedlam in the streets.
Right.
No one is going to stand for 5.2.
No.
This is not
5.2
times more likely to check out earlier from Publix.
Right.
No, we will not have that.
Yes, exactly. 5.2 anything.
5.2 anything.
Yeah.
It's just this ridiculous number.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, where this number came from is a recent report. ACLU did the data. They did the data nationwide, but South Carolina's numbers resonate with me because I'm home.
Right.
And so, and this was May 2020. I didn't see the report until June because COVID, we're redoing classes, and it's nuts on campus. And so I just happened to be reading my cousin's Facebook page, and there was the article from the Island Packet, and my head exploded. I picked up the pieces, I put it back on, I adjusted my crown, and I said, this seems like a public policy issue. What shall I do? And I used the methodology that I recommend to my students. When you identify an issue, look at the data, do the background research, and prepare a memo to elected officials. Give them the information and give them some recommendations to mitigate the situation.
Gotcha.
And that's what I'm doing. None of this campaign is not like Black Lives Matter. It is not sexy. It is not, eye-catching.
Right.
What I'm talking about is long-term, boring, sluggish work of holding public officials accountable for equitable public policy development. We are talking about a marathon.
Right.
Okay. So the first thing in my I addressed a memo to all members of Beaufort County Council. A, making them aware of the data, and then B, suggesting that there are 3 things that we need to do based on this trend of racialized policing. First and foremost, we need to decriminalize marijuana. Now, there's a difference between legalizing marijuana and decriminalizing marijuana. Legalizing marijuana is a federal thing, and there's actually a federal piece of legislation working its way through the process right now. Remember, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. So the MORE Act is somewhere in federal bill land.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's about legalizing marijuana, but this is about decriminalizing it. And the reason I recommend this to the Beaufort County Council is because that is actually action that they can take now. They can mandate, hey, we're going to decriminalize it. And what does that mean? It simply means we are not going to be arresting people for small marijuana possession. We're not going to attach fines of any type. We are going to drastically and dramatically rethink the way we
it should be.
Even
but,
though,
you know, yeah.
even though it should be.
Right.
But because we have, over the course of at least 10 years, that's where the data is, racially implemented law enforcement in Beaufort County to the detriment of black citizens. And that is inequitable public policy. Okay, so this is not about who agrees with smoking marijuana.
Right.
It's not. It is about what is equitable public policy. And just so you know, equity and equality are not the same things.
Right.
All right. And we are pushing for justice. And so decriminalizing marijuana, because it has an outsized negative impact on black people, is justice. Okay.
Yes.
And we need that in order to get to equality. So that's point one. Decriminalize marijuana. Stop the madness.
Yes.
And then point two, we all know, I would imagine in our community, someone who has been negatively impacted by an arrest.
Oh, absolutely.
And fines. And these are not small
Several
things,
people.
but several things. And,
Yeah.
and the impact of this is so multiple. First of all, of course, there's a potential for losing your freedom. That's first and foremost. And if that happens, then you have to deal with all of the fallout, the mental impact on the individual, the emotional, the physical, the financial damage.
Can't get a job.
All of, you student loans, forget
Right.
about it. All of those things for the individual. But you talk about me and the community. So I go just beyond the individual. What about our communities? We have been deprived of talented people, young people in many instances, who are creative, who are forward-thinking, who are entrepreneurial, right? And they are shuffled through the system at 5 times the rate of our white counterparts, pulled out of our communities, thrust into this criminal just us system, and then should they get the opportunity to return, they return with a stigma.
Right.
And it's not just a stigma that's placed on by society. We even stigmatize them. Think about how you think of someone, not you, Mahoganee, because you're a wonderful, fabulous person, and you would not do that. Artists don't do that. But just think about regular people, you know,
Right.
regular folks who'd be like, oh, I don't know if I want him to come to the family with Junior. You know, he just got out of lockup and everything. I don't know. Oh, I don't know if I want her to be babysitting the child, because you know she been in jail, you know. This is having a damaging impact on our communities and the ways in which we go about living and being and loving. And so that's problematic. So I think point 2 of my recommendations is that I think because Beaufort County has such a clear pattern of racialized policing and racialized law enforcement, we need individual restoration and re-entry plans for our community members. I'm not talking about just anyone who got cleaned up by marijuana possession. I'm talking about black people in Beaufort County who were swept up in this 5.2 times more likely. We need individual restoration and re-entry plans for those ladies and gentlemen such that they can be reincorporated back into our community in a whole, full way. So I'm talking about mental health support services. I'm talking about ancillary wraparound economic support services. I'm talking about entrepreneurship support. I'm talking about restoration of voting rights and getting something just as small as a driver's license or ID. You know, things that when you come from being incarcerated, it's difficult to obtain. Right. If you can't do those things, Mahoganee, what's the likelihood that you're going to be able to connect to the legitimate economy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very limited. So that's my second bullet. Restore our community members and stop penalizing the black community in Beaufort for these racialized law enforcement policies. And the third policy is the least sexy of all. the third recommendation is the least sexy of all. It's the one that will get the least amount of interest, but it is the one that will have the most impact. And it's called a racial equity analysis for every Beaufort County department. I'll say it again. Racial equity analysis for every Beaufort County department.
Okay, every. E-V-R-Y.
Everyone.
Everybody.
Now, so what does that mean? This is a paradigm shift. It is a completely different way of looking at and providing public goods and services. It says before we move forward with anything else, we've got to do a couple of things. First of all, we've got to get on one accord about this matter of institutionalized racism. We've got to have the words to say it, and history of the United States of
Right.
America,
In the entire history.
in the entire history, it's tainted with racism and white supremacy.
Because it was created just for that
To s-
purpose.
You understand what
Yes.
I'm saying? So
Mhm.
and so for my white brothers and sisters, allies who are thinking, listen, I have nothing to do with racism. I am not racist. I don't support racist policies, and I want equality. Like I truly want it. Here is the rub. Our policies have baked in inequality. And there are books written about it. My mentor, Susan T. Gooden, wrote the book, as far as I'm concerned, and it is called Race, a Nervous Area of Government.
That's a good title.
It's the truth, okay? We are too nervous in public policy to say, I think we might have racist undertones in our policy. We are too nervous to say, I think the black students aren't getting what they should be getting the black ones. So we say things like urban, diverse, instead of calling a thing a thing.
Yeah, right.
And so we really have to do that work, first of all. That's what racial equity analysis, you start with that.
Okay.
You start with calling it out. And you also invite everyone to the table and acknowledge that, listen, we are not saying that individual people are responsible for racism in our public policy. We are saying that public policy was a tool and it can be used in any way.
Right.
It's just like the internet. The internet has child pornography on it. Okay, it does. But we're on the internet right now too.
Right.
So are we child pornography
Right.
purveyors? No. What we are saying is
No, we
have
are
to-
not.
No, we are.
Let me say that. No, we are not.
No, we are absolutely not. And we would like to reserve a hot place in hell for those who are. And if you are and you're listening, I am
Oh my
putting in a word to
Yes,
the Most
let's
High.
Clear that up. Okay.
But I use that harsh analogy
Right. And I get it. The
because
yin and the yang of everything.
because
Yeah.
policy is a tool.
Mhm.
And it can cut both ways. And if we say to ourselves, well, policy was used to completely disenfranchise black people in South Carolina and murder them if they wanted to vote. Public policy was
Right.
used for that. That wasn't someone with a bad attitude or someone who hated black people. That was the South Carolina
Right.
legislator.
Exactly. That
Mhm.
was the law
That
that
was
was
the
created
law.
specifically.
And so we can say now what we can do is use public policy to get to equality. We can, but we've got to be very purposeful and intentional about it. We can't be shy and we can't be nervous about saying black, white,
Right.
unjust. We really have to get our minds wrapped around that. And
What
so
we cannot say is I don't see color.
tell them why
Because
we
this
can't see it.
is color driven.
All right.
Okay, so we cannot come from that place.
And it would take an artist to remind us that we have to look at color. Hey, because color is beautiful.
Exactly.
I mean, take a
Acknowledge
look at
the
this
beauty in it.
Look at this beauty.
know, these head wrap
beauty
queens,
and
come on now.
diversity. You can't not. How do you not want to see all this
Exactly.
color? You're
Exactly.
missing out. Our problem with people who want to say I'm colorblind and I don't see color. They come from a meaningful place for the majority of them. I'll take a positive approach.
Right, yes.
And I think the approach, what they want to be saying is, I don't want there to be monetary or social differences between us. I don't mind our differences, but I don't want those differences to mean you have less and I have more. And what I'm suggesting is, say that. Be color bold. I'm borrowing this from Melody Hobson. Be color bold or color brave, where you say, I want to see color, I want to see difference, and I want to see it not attached to social or political or economic differences. I don't want your color to be a determining factor of whether or not you succeed or fail. That's all.
All of that.
That's what we want. But we
All of that.
absolutely want to
Yes.
see color.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
live in color,
All of
live,
that.
bold, vibrant color.
Go watch some old episodes of Living in Color.
You
get it. Yeah.
So after we have that conversation, right, we being public policy practitioners, so I'm talking, from the water billing, this is not just a law enforcement thing. I'm
Right.
talking to,
Everywhere.
Everything,
Everywhere.
education, the grass cutting facilities,
Yes.
them too. Procurement, yes please, y'all as well.
All of that.
Assessor's office, all of that.
Everything. Yeah.
And there's precedent for this. It's called the Government Association for Racial Equity. And so over 200 localities so behind. That's okay. We're gonna catch up.
Yeah.
And they went from every agency, and it was hard work. People fought, kicking and screaming. I'm not racist. I don't want to do this. Black folk were like, I don't want to do this either. No, nobody want to do. And at the end of the day, they did the work, and they increased equity. And so, racial equity analysis simply says we look at our data with a racial lens, so that we can look at our data without a racial lens. You know, everyone who says, I don't want to talk about race anymore, listen, black folk don't want to talk about race anymore either. The only reason we talk about race is because our lives are so impacted by it.
Literally.
Our life chances, our actual lives,
yes,
and our life chances.
We want to make it home alive, literally.
Are so impacted by race, so we have to talk about it. But trust and believe, it is our goal to be able to stop talking about race. And I promise you, if there was another way to do this, I would research it, and I would bring it, I would build a campaign around it. But I am convinced by the evidence that's available that the only way for us to actually secure equality through public policy is by taking the means of equity. And so it's a long-term approach, and it's not going to be popular. I'm asking the community to hold our elected officials accountable for equity. And I think there's a couple of ways that we can make that happen. I think we can do like the marches. Okay, so we were a part of the March for Change, and that really heightens awareness. It puts it in the public mind. It's out there.
Gives them something visible to see, right? Okay.
Absolutely, and they can attach to it and say, okay, something is up.
Yes.
All right, let me pay attention.
I saw the march today. Let me go Google and see what was happening.
What was that about?
Yeah.
And then, but as you're doing that, you also sort of engage and mentor young people, because a movement dies without, and you all do this superbly. You always engage young people in your activities. You always have them sort of at the, hey, you're the next voice, you're the next narrative, so let's make sure we link up. And there's never the circle is unbroken. There's never a kink in the chain. If I'm gone tomorrow, somebody should pick up my little equity now, equality later folder, pick it up, run with the plan. It is not about me, it's not attached to an individual. So that's the piece. And mentoring keeps our communities vibrant as well. We really want our young people to feel as that they actually have a say in the process, so that when they get to a point where they're voting and this is not new to them, they're already engaged. And the final thing, again, it's always the third bullet point, that's the least sexy, the least interesting, meetings. Listen, General Assembly meets, Beaufort County Council meets, your school boards meet, your major nonprofit boards meet, and these are all, with the exception of nonprofit boards, the others are local and state elected officials who should be accountable to the general public. But public policy makers and practitioners have a very wide range of things that they can do, and a very narrow range of things that they have to do. So, the path of least resistance and all. Folks are going to do what they have to do, and then they will do what they're held accountable to doing. So racial equity is out here.
Right.
There's no policy maker or practitioner who looks at their job description and says, oh my goodness, today I got to make racial equity. Thank goodness, because they'd all be failing because we don't got it. So out here is where we have to be, we, meaning anyone who's listening, anyone who's watching.
The community.
The community, this big old thing. We have to be out here pushing every time council meets. Right now they're meeting virtually. So we've got to be on the comment section saying, hey, what about that memo for racial equity? Are you all going to decriminalize marijuana this year? We really want you to decriminalize marijuana this year because it has been inequitably enforced in Beaufort County. There's racial inequity. Black people are 5.2 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession in Beaufort County. We need, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 citizens typing that at this virtual county
and that
meeting
was actually
every
my
month.
next question.
Every month we need folks doing that. Every month we need people asking, hey, what about our community members who were caught up in that 5.2? Are y'all going to do a restoration plan for them? We until they do it. That's the important part. Every month until they do it. See, sometimes movements are a flash in the pan, and that's when they're moments. Oh, I was angry about this 5.2. I marched, I put on a shirt, I had a banner, I went to Penn Center, and I said my piece.
And
then I went home, I had me some dinner,
okra.
I had some okra from EP Farms. It was delicious. I listened to that 1619 New Fire again, woo, for the 1900th time, and I forgot all about equity. I said my piece. It's not fixed. We don't have equity yet. That's not how it works. You really have to be dogged, or like my son said, diligent and invested in this thing. And you can't take no personally. And you really have to be committed. Like, I'm gonna be here at this meeting. I don't care if the meeting's in Hilton Head. I'm gonna be there. If it's in Bluffton, I'm gonna be there. If it's online, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna prioritize it. We have people who are incarcerated right now who need us to speak for them. We have community members right now who are living on the margins because they have not been restored from being incarcerated, and we need to speak for them. We have brothers and sisters who are, listen, a $50 or $120 ticket is a defining ticket for a lot of people. That will really change the trajectory of their month, and then change the trajectory of their quarter, and then change the trajectory of their year, and then change the trajectory of their lives. Those tickets add up to a black tax. Even if they're not arrested, if there's a fine and a ticket, that's a black tax. Because you're 5.2 times more likely to get it, you see, so you're taxed.
Yeah.
I know my melanin is beautiful and is valuable and all of that, Beaufort County, but please, stop taxing me for it.
Please. Stop taxing us for it.
Stop taxing us for it. And that's the work that we have to do. We just have to be committed, and we have to tell as many people as we can, hey, you got to go to the council meeting, and you got to talk about these things. You got to talk about the inequitable distribution of our law enforcement resources. You got to talk about the need to restore people, and you got to say, if law enforcement is racially inequitable, I bet you the rest of our county government of offices need to look see too. And remember, we're not talking about racist people. That's not what we're saying, because we're talking about systemic racism, institutional racism, public policy,
Hundreds of years old
and just
policies.
Yes, none of us created them.
Right.
All of us have a responsibility for fixing them.
Because a certain group of people are benefiting, and a certain group of people are not.
And if we are who we say we are, if we are the United States of America, and all of those principles that we espouse, then we better live up to that notion, or we need to change a whole lot of things in these constitutions and our articles, and we just need to go back to the drawing board and redo some of our public policy documents so they can be more congruent with our approach.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yes,
So that's
absolutely.
it. As you can see, I will talk ad nauseum on this particular topic. You will have to tell me to be quiet.
Well, and you know, the next time I think we need to just stream. Because that will get people involved. Is my point. I think this is a great introduction, but I think that will be a way of continuing the conversation so that they all can be involved.
Absolutely.
All right, so this ends our conversation with Dr. Najmah Thomas. But if you want to, and all of this great information, as much as we can gather, we will have posted along with the video so that the community can get involved and write those memos and make those phone calls and get rid of this 5.2. 5.2, it's going to stay in my head because my birthday is 5/20. So I'm not going to forget it. That's going to stick with me. But yes, so visit responsibleartistry.org on all social media, Responsible Artistry TV. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.